The arena was alive with sound. Thousands of alien voices echoed in a strange rhythm, deep and sharp, like drums beating from inside a storm. The air smelled of burning metal and dust. Bright torches flickered on high walls, casting long shadows across the sand. At the center of the arena stood a single figure, small compared to the towering gates and colossal statues. He was human. The human's name was Kale. He had been brought here as a prisoner of war, but now he stood in the circle where champions fought for glory or death. Around him, alien eyes stared with hunger and amusement. They waited for him to break. They waited for him to fall to his knees before the one they called their queen. Every whisper carried the same warning. Do not look at her. Do not stare into the eyes of the Beast Queen. To meet her gaze was to lose yourself. To challenge her stare was to invite your own destruction. Kale heard the warnings. He felt the tension pressing on his chest like heavy chains. But he was human. He had never been good at obeying orders made to keep him afraid. He lifted his chin. His eyes moved toward the throne at the far end of the arena. She was there. The Beast Queen sat on a high seat carved from black stone. The light of the torches shimmered over her figure. She was not entirely human, yet not entirely beast. Her body was tall and strong, covered in dark markings that shifted like living armor. Her hair flowed like molten fire, sharp and glowing under the torchlight. Her face was fierce, with eyes that burned like twin suns. Every creature in the arena lowered their heads before her. But Kale looked. For a single heartbeat, their eyes met. The silence that followed felt heavier than the roar of battle. It fell over the arena like a shroud. Every alien mouth stopped. Every whisper froze. The Queen's eyes narrowed. Kale felt the weight of her gaze, sharp as blades, heavy as mountains. His chest tightened. His legs shook, but he did not turn away. Something deep inside him refused to bow. Humans had stared into storms, into fire, into darkness before. Humanity had looked at the impossible and dared to face it. The Queen rose from her throne. Her voice rolled like thunder, strong and cold. You! Human! You dare! The crowd erupted in a storm of noise. They screamed, cheered, cursed, and howled. Some demanded his death at once. Others laughed, eager to watch the spectacle. Kale stood in the center of it all, heart pounding, breath heavy. The Queen's eyes locked on him, and she raised her clawed hand. You have broken the law of my court. You have stared into the eyes of your queen. You are now bound by the challenge. Kale's pulse thundered in his ears. Bound. That word carried weight. He had heard it before. A binding meant there was no escape. The one who stared was claimed. The one who stared was marked as her opponent. The gates of the arena groaned open, releasing the smell of iron and blood. Chains dragged across stone. The crowd chanted, calling her title, over and over. The Beast Queen. The Beast Queen. The sound shook the walls. Kale's fists tightened. He could feel every eye on him, every alien waiting to see him crushed. He wanted to run. He wanted to fight. He wanted to live. The Queen stepped down from her throne, each footfall echoing through the sand. Her presence filled the arena with crushing force. She was taller than any human soldier Kale had known. Her aura was wild and untamed, like a storm-given flesh. Yet her eyes never left his. Kale's breath caught in his throat. She was terrifying, but in her gaze there was something more. Something he could not name. You are my chosen challenger, she declared. Her voice shook the ground itself. At dawn, you will stand before me. And you will fall. The crowd howled in madness. Some slammed their weapons against the walls. Others cried out for blood. The sound of it pressed against Kale's skull, but still he stood. That night, he was locked in a chamber beneath the arena. The air was damp and cold. He sat against the wall, staring at the faint torchlight outside the bars. His body trembled with exhaustion, but his mind burned with fire. He remembered the warnings. Do not look at her. Do not stare. And yet he had. He could not stop himself. In her eyes he had seen danger, but he had also seen life. He had seen a force unbroken, a soul untamed. Tomorrow he would fight her. Tomorrow he would die, or he would prove to this galaxy what it meant to be human. The crowd above still sang her name. The Beast Queen. But deep in his heart, Kale whispered another word. Challenge. The hook had been set. His fate was sealed. The night stretched long and heavy. Kale lay on the cold stone floor of his chamber. Above him, faint tremors shook the ceiling with every roar from the crowd. They were still awake, still chanting the name of their queen. Her power reached even through the walls. Sleep did not come. His body was tired, but his mind stayed sharp. He could not escape the weight of tomorrow. He would face her, the Beast Queen. Not a soldier. Not a warlord. A queen who had crushed every champion for decades. When the guards came, their footsteps rang against the stone floor. Their shapes filled the narrow hall, tall figures with scaled armor and glowing eyes. They opened the bars and threw down a plate of strange food. None of them spoke at first. They only stared at him. Their eyes carried a look Kale knew well. Pity. One of them finally leaned closer. His voice was low and heavy, like gravel. No human has ever stood before her and lived. You should beg for mercy when the sun rises. Another hissed with a sharp smile. Or fall to your knees now. Save yourself the pain. She is not merciful. She will break you. Kale pushed the plate aside. His throat was dry, but he forced his voice to remain steady. I will stand. I will not beg. The guards laughed, their voices echoing down the stone hall. Brave words. Pointless words. Then they left him alone again. Silence returned, but it was not empty. The silence spoke with the weight of all those who had come before him. Warriors from across the galaxy had stood where he stood now. And all of them had fallen. Kale's thoughts drifted to earth. He remembered standing in the ruins of old cities, places where humanity had fought impossible wars. His ancestors had faced monsters of their own. Kings. Empires. Machines. Storms. And yet humans had endured. He let that memory rest in his chest like a fire. The hours dragged until the iron doors opened once again. This time, it was not guards but whispers that came. From the dark hall, voices floated like shadows. Not mocking now. Not cruel. Curious. They say he looked into her eyes. Impossible. No one does that. I saw it. The queen rose from her throne. She did not strike him down at once. She chose him. The whispers grew louder, carried by the guards, the servants, and the prisoners who listened from their own cells. They passed through walls and bars until the entire Undercity spoke of the human. Some spoke with awe. Others with fear. Kale sat in the corner, his head lowered. He could feel the tide shifting. He was not just a prisoner anymore. He was a story. When dawn began to paint the stone with pale light, they dragged him from his chamber. The chains around his wrists clinked with each step. The path led through long tunnels carved into the earth. The air grew warmer. Louder. The closer they moved to the surface, the louder the voices became. The arena was awake. When they pushed him into the light, the sound hit him like a wave. Thousands of aliens filled the stands. Their skin glistened in the sun. Their eyes glowed. Some held banners marked with claw symbols, the crest of their queen. Others clutched weapons, striking them against stone to drum their fury. Every gaze turned to him. The human! Voices cried. The human challenger! Kale's legs felt heavy, but he walked forward. Each step left a mark in the sand. His heart raced, but he forced his chest to rise steady. He would not show weakness. At the far end, the queen waited. She stood tall, her figure framed by banners of fire and steel. The sunlight caught the sharp edges of her armor. Her eyes locked on him again, unblinking. Whispers rippled across the arena like a storm. He does not bow. He does not fear her. He will die. Kale felt their words pressing on him, but he kept moving. When he reached the center, he raised his head high. The queen stepped forward. Her claws gleamed, her steps heavy with power. The crowd grew still, their whispers fading into silence. Only her voice remained, cutting through the air like a blade. Human! Do you understand the law of this place? Kale's voice was firm, though his throat felt dry. I understand. I looked at you. Now I face you. The crowd erupted again, wild with excitement. Some screamed for blood. Others shouted for fire. But the queen only stared. Her expression carried no smile, no frown. Only curiosity. You carry fear, she said. But you do not bend. Why? Kale's answer came from deep inside. It was not planned. It was truth. Because I am human. We do not bend. The silence that followed was heavier than before. The crowd did not know what to make of his words. But the queen understood. Her eyes glowed brighter, and for the briefest moment, Kale thought he saw something hidden behind her mask of fury. Something close to respect. The drums thundered, shaking the walls. The trial would begin soon. The whispers had grown into a storm, wrapping him in both dread and wonder. He was not just a man anymore. He was the challenger. And tomorrow, the galaxy would remember. The morning sun rose high above the arena, casting golden light across the sands. The heat shimmered, rising in waves, making the stone walls appear alive. Every seat in the Colosseum was filled. The roar of the crowd struck like thunder. They had come for blood. They had come to see the beast queen break the human. Kale stood in the center of the arena. His wrists were unchained now, but the weight of the moment pressed on him like armor. His body trembled, though he tried to steady it. The sand was hot beneath his boots. He could feel the eyes of thousands upon him. His heartbeat echoed louder than the drums. The gates opened. From the shadowed tunnel, she came. The beast queen entered with a presence that silenced the crowd. Her steps were slow, each one heavy with power. She wore no crown, yet her very presence was one. Her armor glistened in the light, sharp edges curving like the bones of some ancient beast. Her hair streamed like fire, alive and bright. In her hand she carried a spear, long and black, carved from the bone of a creature long extinct. Her eyes found him instantly. The weight of her gaze struck Kale harder than any weapon. His breath caught, but he forced himself not to look away. The announcer's voice bellowed across the arena, speaking in a tongue Kale only half understood. The words were clear enough. Trial of strength. The crowd screamed in answer. The queen raised her spear, then lowered it into the sand with a heavy strike. The signal was given. The trial had begun. She moved first. Her body was swift, far faster than her size suggested. She lunged forward, her spear cutting the air with deadly grace. Kale dove aside, the weapon slamming into the sand where he had stood a moment before. Dust flew upward in a cloud. He rolled, came to his feet, and drew the short blade they had allowed him. Against her spear, it looked like a toy. But it was all he had. The queen turned to face him, her expression unreadable. Her spear whirled again, each strike precise, each movement practiced. She was not fighting to kill him yet. She was testing him. Kale felt the sting of fear rise, but he forced his muscles to obey. He ducked beneath her strike, then swung upward. His blade met the shaft of her spear. The sound rang across the arena like metal against stone. The crowd gasped. Again she pressed him, faster now. Her spear struck left, then right, then forward. Each time, Kale dodged by inches. Each time, the sand flew around them, each strike leaving marks deep in the ground. His chest heaved with effort, but he refused to give ground. When her spear came down like a falling tower, he raised his blade, sparks flying as he blocked. His knees buckled under the force, but he did not fall. The queen's eyes narrowed. For the first time, her expression changed. She was not bored. She was not cold. She was curious. The crowd shouted louder, voices rising in disbelief. No human had ever lasted this long. Kale's arm ached. His blade shook in his hand. But with every strike he survived, something inside him grew stronger. Humanity had always been small compared to the galaxy. Yet humanity endured storms, endured hunger, endured wars. They had never been the strongest. But they had always been stubborn. The queen lunged again, her spear thrust aimed for his chest. At the last moment, Kale twisted aside. The spear cut the air past him, close enough that the wind burned his skin. In that instant, he stepped forward, raising his blade. He slashed at her arm. The sound of steel against armor rang loud. A shallow mark appeared on her wrist guard. It was not a wound. It was not victory. But it was contact. The arena fell into silence. The Beast Queen looked at her arm, then looked back at him. Her eyes burned brighter, but it was not pure rage. It was something more. Kale stood with his chest heaving, sweat running down his face. His hand shook, but he lifted his blade again. The silence broke as the crowd screamed, louder than ever before. Some called for his death. Others shouted in awe. The human had touched her. The queen raised her spear again, this time with both hands. She spun it with a force that shook the air. The wind carried sand into Kale's face, stinging his eyes. She lunged with renewed fury. Kale barely blocked, falling to one knee under the pressure. The spear pressed against his blade, the weight of her strength crushing down. His arms trembled, his muscles burned, but still he held on. For a moment their faces were close, their eyes locked. The queen's gaze burned with challenge. Kale's burned with defiance. The crowd could feel it. Something had shifted. This was no longer just a trial. It was something else. A storm between two wills. With a final surge, Kale pushed back, breaking the clash. He stumbled, but he did not fall. The queen straightened, lowering her spear slightly. She tilted her head, watching him with a new expression. Respect. The drums thundered, but their sound was drowned by the wild cheers and cries of the crowd. The human had not won. He had not lost. But he had stood. The trial of strength was not yet over. But the galaxy had already begun to whisper of something impossible. A human who could stand against the Beast Queen. The sun reached its peak above the arena, pouring heat over the sand. The Beast Queen stood tall, her spear still in hand, her chest rising with steady breaths. Across from her, Kale struggled to stay on his feet. His arms were heavy, his blade felt dull, and sweat rolled down his skin like fire. Yet he did not fall. The crowd shouted with madness. Some called for her to crush him. Others demanded she end the trial. But she did not move. She only stared at him, silent, unblinking. Kale raised his blade again, though his hand trembled. His knees threatened to give way. Still, his eyes refused to bow. The queen stepped closer. Her spear dragged lightly across the sand, leaving a sharp line between them. The sound made the crowd fall quiet. She circled him like a predator circles prey. Her movements were smooth, but her gaze was sharp, fixed only on him. "You should have fallen," she said at last. Her voice carried across the arena, calm and cold. "Yet you stand." Kale's throat was dry, but his words came steady. "I told you. I am human. We do not bend." For a moment, the queen's expression shifted. Her lips tightened, almost as if she wanted to smile but would not allow it. She raised her spear again, but slower this time. She swung at him, not with killing force, but with measured strikes. Kale blocked, barely keeping up. Her blows were strong, but there was something different now. Her strikes were no longer meant to crush him at once. They tested his balance, his speed, his spirit. The duel was no longer a slaughter. It was becoming something else. A test. Kale realized it when their blades locked again, and she did not press to kill him. Instead, she held the clash longer than needed. Their faces drew close, breaths mingling in the heated air. Her eyes burned like fire, but inside that fire was something more. Curiosity. The crowd began to murmur, confused. "Why does she wait? Why does she hold back?" Kale felt the tremor of her strength through the clash. His muscles screamed, but he held firm. In that moment, he saw past the armor, past the beastly title. He saw a woman, bound by power, by throne, by expectation. And she saw him, not as prey, but as defiance given flesh. She pushed him back, sending him stumbling. But she did not follow with the killing blow. Instead, she lowered her spear, tilting her head slightly. "You could have struck me earlier," she said. "You had the chance. Why did you spare me?" Kale breathed hard, his chest heaving, sweat pouring. His answer came raw and simple. "Because I do not see a monster. I see a queen." The words rippled through the arena like a stone dropped into water. Silence followed, sharp and heavy. The queen's eyes widened just enough for the crowd to notice. For the first time in living memory, the beast queen hesitated. The crowd erupted into chaos. Some screamed in rage, demanding her to end him at once. Others shouted with disbelief. Never before had anyone spoken to her like this. Kale stood firm, though his body trembled. He lowered his blade, showing no fear. "You are strong, but strength is not all you are. You fight because they demand it. Not because you choose." The queen's jaw tightened. For a moment, her spear shook in her hand, as though her own heart fought against the law of her throne. The crowd's voices clashed like thunder. Yet inside the arena, Kale and the queen stood in a strange silence. The air between them was heavy, charged with something neither had expected. Respect. Bond. Danger. She stepped closer, her shadow falling over him. Her voice was low, only for him. "Careful, human. You play with fire. Fire burns all who touch it." Kale looked up, meeting her gaze without fear. "Sometimes fire gives light. Sometimes fire gives warmth. Sometimes fire frees those trapped in the dark." For the briefest heartbeat, her lips parted as if his words had cut deeper than any blade. Then she turned away, raising her spear high into the air. The crowd roared as she declared, "The trial is not finished. Tomorrow it continues." The guards rushed forward to drag Kale away, though their hands trembled with unease. No one had ever survived this long. No one had ever drawn such words from their queen. As Kale was taken back into the tunnels, he glanced once more at the throne. The queen had returned to her seat, but her eyes followed him. Not with anger. Not with hatred. With something far more dangerous. Interest. The whispers would spread faster now. The human had not only endured. He had touched something inside the heart of the Beast Queen. And that was a bond no one could control. The night was silent inside the Undercity. Kale sat alone in his chamber, his back pressed to the cold wall. His body ached from the trial. Every muscle screamed, every breath burned. Yet his mind refused to rest. The image of the queen haunted him. The fire in her eyes. The way her spear had paused instead of striking. The way her voice had lowered to speak only to him. Something had shifted between them. He could feel it. The guards had left him food and water. He ignored it. His stomach twisted with nerves. Tomorrow, he knew, the trial would continue. But it would not be the same. When the door creaked open in the dark, Kale tensed. He expected guards. Instead, a tall shadow entered. Torches from the hall cast faint light across her figure. His heart froze. It was her. The Beast Queen stepped into the chamber with slow, deliberate grace. She wore no crown, no heavy armor, only dark cloth that wrapped her frame. Even without her weapons, her presence filled the room like thunder. The guards outside did not follow. She had come alone. Kale rose to his feet, though pain spread through his limbs. "Why are you here?" he asked. His voice was low but steady. She studied him in silence. Her golden eyes glowed faintly in the dark, sharp and unblinking. For a long moment neither spoke. Then her words came quiet, almost careful. "No one has ever stood against me as you did today. No one has ever looked at me as you did." Kale's throat tightened, but he forced himself to meet her gaze. "I told you. I do not see a beast." Her lips curved slightly, but not in a smile. More in disbelief. She stepped closer, the air around her thick with heat. Do you know what they call me, human? Beast Queen. Monster. Curse of my people. They fear me, worship me, and hate me. All at once. They chained me to this throne. They made me fight, again and again. I am their cage as much as I am their ruler. Her voice carried both anger and sorrow, wrapped in steel. Kale listened, his heart pounding. He had seen warriors speak of victory. He had heard soldiers cry in defeat. But her words carried something heavier. Loneliness. Why tell me this? He asked. Because you dared to spare me, she said, her eyes narrowing. No one does that. They come to kill or to die. You did neither. You looked at me, and you saw something different. Kale stepped closer, his chains clinking faintly. His voice was soft, but his words were firm. Because you are more than they say. More than a crown. More than a weapon. Her breath caught, though she tried to hide it. For a moment, the fierce queen seemed less like a beast and more like a woman carrying a weight too heavy to bear. I have slaughtered thousands, she said. I have broken champions from every world. If you had struck me when you had the chance, you might have won your freedom. Instead, you chose mercy. Why? Kale's answer came without thought. Because freedom without honor is no freedom at all. And because killing you would be killing the only one who has looked at me as an equal. Silence filled the chamber. The torches outside flickered, shadows moving across her face. Her eyes softened, just for a heartbeat. You are reckless, she whispered. And dangerous. The crowd already whispers your name. If you live through tomorrow, you will be more than a challenger. You will be a spark. Sparks burn empires. Kale gave a faint smile. Then let them burn. The queen's eyes locked on his. For the first time, her expression cracked. Behind her mask of strength, something alive stirred. Curiosity. Respect. And a dangerous, unspoken bond. She turned at last, her cloak shifting with emotion. At dawn, the trial continues. Stand if you can. Fall if you must. But know this, human. You have already changed something I thought unbreakable. Her footsteps echoed as she left, her shadow fading into the hall. The doors shut, leaving Kale alone again. But he was not the same man who had entered this chamber the night before. His heart was heavy, yet burning. He had glimpsed the truth hidden inside the Beast Queen. She was not a curse. She was a prisoner of her own throne. And now, whether by fate or by choice, he was bound to her. The whispers of fear that had once filled the Undercity were changing. Already they turned into whispers of wonder. Tomorrow the arena would see not only a fight. They would see the spark of something no law could contain. Kale sat back against the wall, his breath steady, his eyes burning with resolve. The galaxy had thrown him into the fire. But sometimes fire revealed more than destruction. Sometimes fire revealed the truth. And the truth was this. The queen was not alone anymore. The dawn sky glowed red as the gates of the arena opened once more. The air was thick with heat and tension. The crowd filled every seat, their voices rising like a storm. Today was the day. The final battle. Kale stepped into the sand, his body bruised, his muscles aching, but his spirit burning. Chains no longer bound his wrists. He walked with his head high. Every alien eye followed him. Some jeered. Some whispered. Some watched in silence, waiting to see if the human spark would be crushed at last. At the far end, the Beast Queen appeared. She came not with cloth or cloak, but in full armor, black and gold, glimmering under the morning sun. Her spear gleamed with deadly light. Her presence made the ground itself feel heavier. But when her eyes found Kale, she slowed. The crowd roared louder, demanding blood. Drums thundered against the stone walls. The announcer called the trial's final stage. Only one would leave standing. Kale gripped his blade tighter. He had thought through every outcome. If he killed her, the arena would rip him apart. If he fell, humanity would be remembered only as weak prey. Yet the memory of her voice from the night before still echoed in his mind. You have already changed something I thought unbreakable. The queen raised her spear. Her face was unreadable, her voice steady as steel. The law demands this fight end in blood. Will you stand, human? Kale lifted his chin. His voice rang clear across the arena. I will stand. But I will not kill you. A ripple of shock spread through the crowd. Silence followed, sharp and heavy. Then the noise returned, louder than ever. Some screamed for his execution. Others howled with laughter. The queen's golden eyes narrowed. She lowered her spear just slightly. You refuse the law? Kale's heart pounded, but his words came strong. I refuse to be their tool. I will not be their entertainment. I will not destroy the only one here who sees me as more than prey. If I must challenge something, I challenge the law itself. Gasps erupted from the stands. Never before had a challenger spoken against the ancient trial. Guards shifted uneasily at the gates. The crowd's roar shook the stone beneath their feet. The queen stood silent for a long moment. Her grip on the spear trembled faintly, almost unseen. Her gaze searched him, as though weighing his soul. You speak with madness, she said at last, her voice low. But madness has power. Do you understand what your choice means? If you defy the trial, the crowd will demand your death. They will tear you apart. And they will see me as weak if I do not kill you. Kale's reply came without hesitation. Then let them see. I would rather die with honor than live as their puppet. And if you choose to strike me, then strike. But know this. Humanity does not bend. Not to fear. Not to law. Not to chains. The silence that followed was unlike anything before. The entire arena froze, caught in the moment. The queen's chest rose and fell, her eyes locked on his. Something broke inside her, though none could see it but him. For centuries she had been the unshaken storm. Now, for the first time, her mask cracked. The crowd shouted, wild with fury. They wanted blood. They wanted a kill. But she did not move. She raised her spear high, as if ready to deliver the final strike. The sound of her weapon cutting the air silenced the crowd again. Kale stood still, his blade lowered, his chest open. He did not flinch. The queen's roar split the sky as she drove her spear downward. The crowd screamed as one. But at the last instant, the spear slammed into the sand beside him, shaking the earth. Kale did not move. He only stared at her. Her voice thundered, not with fury, but with defiance. Enough. This trial is broken. This law is broken. This human is not my prey. He is my challenger. And I will not destroy him. The arena erupted into chaos. Some aliens screamed with rage, others cried out in awe. Guards rushed forward, unsure whether to attack her or him. The sound of rebellion filled the air. Kale felt the weight of history in that instant. The queen had made her choice. Not law. Not tradition. Her own will. She turned her back to the crowd, her eyes burning with fire. From this day, I bow to no law but my own. Let the galaxy hear it. This human has faced me and stood. And I, the Beast Queen, choose him. Her declaration shook the Colosseum. Her people's chains had cracked. Kale's chest heaved, but his heart burned stronger than ever. He had not won through strength. He had not won through blood. He had won by standing unbroken. The final choice had been made. And it had changed everything. The arena shook with chaos. The roar of the crowd split the air like a storm tearing through stone. Thousands screamed at once, their voices filled with rage, fear, and disbelief. The Beast Queen had broken the trial. The sacred law of her people had been shattered before their eyes. Kale stood frozen, his chest heaving, his blade still loose in his hand. The spear that could have ended his life was buried deep in the sand beside him. The queen's choice had spared him. More than that, it had bound their fates together. The guards stormed forward. Their armor clashed, their weapons raised. Their orders were clear. If the queen would not deliver death, they would. But before they could strike, she raised her hand. The air around her burned with power. Her voice thundered, silencing even the bravest of them. Stand down. The guards hesitated, caught between duty and terror. None dared to move closer. The crowd continued to howl, demanding punishment, demanding blood. But the queen's gaze swept over them, and the sound faltered. Her golden eyes glowed like fire, unbroken, untamed. She turned to Kale. You stood when all others would kneel. You saw me not as a curse, but as a queen. You are not my prey. You are my chosen challenger. The words echoed across the Colosseum, louder than the drums, louder than the voices of the mob. The crowd gasped, stunned into silence. Kale's heart pounded. He had never asked for this. He had only wanted to survive, to show that humanity was not weak. But now, before an entire empire, he had become something greater. A symbol. The queen stepped closer. Her shadow fell over him, her presence wrapping him in heat and weight. Yet in her eyes there was no fury. Only fire. Only truth. You stared when none dared. You endured when none believed. You chose defiance when the law demanded surrender. That is why I choose you. Not as enemy. Not as victim. As equal. The silence broke into uproar. Some in the crowd screamed in outrage, others cried out in disbelief. But scattered voices began to rise, chanting the word challenger. At first weak, then stronger. The sound spread through the stands like fire through dry grass. Challenger. 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 Kale stood taller. His body still ached, his arms shook, but he did not waver. He lifted his blade, pointing it not at the queen, but at the sky above. His voice rang out clear. Then let them know. Humanity does not bend. Humanity stands. The chant grew louder. Half the crowd raged, but the other half shouted with fevered voices, carried by something new. Hope. The guards looked to their queen for orders, but she did not waver. She turned to her people and raised her spear high. This human is mine. His challenge is mine. From this day forward, no law will chain me. No throne will bind me. Together, we break what should have broken long ago. Her declaration split the empire's heart. Chains of fear began to crack. Some cheered. Some cursed. But none could deny that the trial had ended in something greater than victory. It had ended in change. The drums fell silent. The torches along the walls burned brighter, as if the arena itself bore witness to a new truth. Kale lowered his blade and met her gaze once more. Their eyes locked in the fire of the moment. There was danger between them, but also something deeper. Respect. Understanding. A bond that neither law nor crowd could shatter. The queen leaned close, her voice low enough for only him to hear. You dared to stare. Now you must stand beside me. This is your burden as my challenger. Kale's breath caught, but he did not flinch. Then I will carry it. Until the end. The crowd screamed again, their voices rising into chaos. But for Kale and the queen, the world had narrowed to the space between them. Two souls bound by defiance. Two sparks that could ignite a fire across the stars. The guards lowered their weapons at last. The crowd's chants echoed into the sky. The story of the Beast Queen and the human challenger had already begun to spread beyond the arena. It would reach every world, every throne, every empire. Kale looked up at the burning sun. He had come here as a prisoner, nothing more than a man dragged into chains. Now he stood as a symbol. A human who had stared into the eyes of the Beast Queen and lived. He had not won with strength. He had not won with blood. He had won with defiance, with courage, with truth. The queen raised her spear one final time, her voice shaking the heavens. Let the galaxy remember this day. The day a human stood unbroken. The day I chose a challenger. The crowd's roar rolled like thunder, carrying her words beyond the arena. A legend had been born. Kale stood in the center of the storm, his blade in his hand, his heart burning with fire. He was no longer prisoner. He was no longer prey. He was the chosen challenger. And the galaxy would never forget.